When a talk show host tried to humiliate Carrie Underwood on live TV, she turned the tables with one line that stunned the world. The air in the studio was electric, the kind of energy that makes you lean closer to the edge of your seat. Carrie Underwood had agreed to appear on Live Tonight with Melanie Hayes, a talk show known for its bold political undertones and no-holds-barred approach to interviews. The stage was set, the lights were hot, and the audience buzzed with anticipation. Carrie was no stranger to the spotlight. With her Grammy wins, sold-out tours, and decades-long career, she'd faced tough questions before. But this wasn't a typical promotional sit-down. Melanie Hayes, the host, was infamous for her sharp tongue and knack for creating viral gotcha moments. Her interviews often walked a fine line between entertainment and provocation, and tonight, Carrie was her target. From the moment Carrie walked on stage, there was an unmistakable tension in the room. She radiated confidence in a sleek navy pantsuit, her blonde hair framing a calm yet determined expression. The audience cheered, but Melanie's smile hinted at something more calculated. She had a plan, and Carrie was about to step right into it. The interview began harmlessly enough. Melanie asked about Carrie's new album, her tour schedule, and life as a working mom. Carrie answered with her usual warmth, her voice steady and genuine. But as the questions shifted toward broader topics, her faith, her views on certain social issues, it became clear that Melanie wasn't interested in staying on safe ground. "I've got to ask," Melanie said, leaning forward in her chair. "You've been pretty vocal about your personal values, especially when it comes to certain political topics. Do you think it's responsible for someone in your position to share such divisive views?" It was a loaded question, wrapped in a tone that suggested judgment more than curiosity. The audience murmured, sensing the shift in the room. Carrie didn't flinch, but you could see the gears turning behind her composed exterior. But this was just the opening move, and everyone in the room could feel that Melanie was only getting started. Carrie met Melanie's pointed question with a measured smile, taking a moment to let the weight of the words settle. "I believe everyone has the right to their own opinion," she said, her voice calm but firm. "As an artist, my job is to share my truth, not to dictate what others should believe." The response earned a smattering of applause from the audience, but Melanie wasn't about to let it end there. She leaned back in her chair, her smile sharp and unyielding. "Fair enough," she replied, her tone carrying just enough edge to suggest otherwise. "But don't you think that, as a public figure, your truth could have unintended consequences? Maybe even alienate some of your fans?" Carrie tilted her head slightly, a gesture that wasn't dismissive but certainly confident. "I think my fans know who I am. They've supported me for years because they appreciate my honesty. I trust them to make their own decisions, just as I've made mine." Melanie's eyes narrowed, her gaze almost predatory. This was the moment she'd been waiting for, the chance to go beyond casual debate and corner her guest. She adjusted her position, leaning forward with feigned concern. "But what about when your truth doesn't align with progress? I mean, don't you worry that sticking to your personal beliefs could make you seem, well, out of touch?" The audience gasped lightly, sensing the intensity ramping up. Carrie's expression didn't waver, but there was a slight shift in her posture, a subtle straightening of her spine, a sign that she was ready to push back. The cameras caught every detail: Melanie's smirk, the audience's eager anticipation, and Carrie's composed determination. "Out of touch?" Carrie repeated, as if testing the phrase. "I'm not sure I understand what you mean. Could you clarify?" It was a masterful move. By asking for clarification, Carrie subtly flipped the dynamic. Melanie, now on the spot, hesitated for a fraction of a second. But she recovered quickly, disguising the pause with a dramatic shrug. "Well, let's just say that not everyone agrees with the stances you've taken on certain issues. Some might even call them outdated." The room fell silent. Even the audience seemed unsure of how to react. It was the kind of tension that made everyone feel like they were part of the moment, unsure of what would come next but unable to look away. But as the host prepared to press her advantage, Carrie's response was already forming, and it would change the tone of the entire interview. Carrie took a deep breath, her hands resting calmly on her lap. The silence that followed Melanie's jab felt almost tangible, as if the air in the studio had thickened. All eyes were on her, waiting to see how she would respond. With a slight tilt of her head and a measured tone, Carrie began. "Outdated?" she repeated, her voice laced with curiosity rather than defensiveness. "It's interesting that you use that word. To me, holding on to values like kindness, integrity, and faith isn't about being outdated. It's about staying grounded." The audience erupted into applause, a wave of support that seemed to catch even Melanie off guard. But Carrie wasn't done. She leaned forward slightly, her calm demeanor now carrying a quiet intensity. "You know, Melanie, it's easy to sit here and label someone's beliefs as outdated when they don't fit into a specific narrative. But aren't we all here to celebrate diversity? Not just in how we look, but in how we think?" Melanie blinked, momentarily stunned by the grace and precision of Carrie's words. The host opened her mouth to retort, but Carrie continued, her voice growing steadier with each word. "We live in a world where everyone is quick to shout over each other, to assume the worst instead of trying to understand. I think we've forgotten how to have real conversations, ones where we don't have to agree on everything but can still respect one another." The studio was silent again, but this time it wasn't out of discomfort. It was the kind of silence that follows a profound truth, the kind that demands reflection. Even Melanie seemed momentarily at a loss for words, her carefully crafted composure faltering ever so slightly. Carrie, sensing the shift, leaned back with a small smile. "Look, I don't expect everyone to see the world the way I do. That's not what I'm here for. I'm here to share my story, my music, and yes, my values. If that resonates with people, then great. If not, that's okay too. But one thing I'll never do is apologize for being who I am." The audience broke into thunderous applause, some even standing to show their support. Melanie, clearly rattled but trying to regain control, forced a smile. "Well, you certainly know how to make your point," she said, her voice carrying a hint of forced humor. Carrie smiled politely, but her eyes remained steady, unwavering. "I think it's important to stand firm when you believe in something," she replied simply. But the real power of Carrie's words wasn't just in how they silenced Melanie, it was in how they resonated far beyond the studio walls. As the applause subsided, the energy in the room had shifted entirely. The once commanding Melanie Hayes now seemed more cautious, her usual sharpness dulled by Carrie's poised responses. It was clear she hadn't anticipated such grace under pressure, and it left her scrambling to pivot. Melanie adjusted her cue cards, visibly flustered, and attempted to steer the conversation back into safer territory. "Well, Carrie," she said with a forced smile, "your passion is undeniable, and I'm sure your fans appreciate that about you." Carrie nodded graciously. "I think passion is something we could all use a little more of, don't you think?" The subtle jab wasn't lost on the audience. Laughter rippled through the room, followed by another round of applause. Melanie chuckled, though it didn't quite reach her eyes, and moved on to wrap up the segment. But the damage was already done. Carrie had taken the moment Melanie had crafted to corner her and transformed it into a powerful display of integrity and authenticity. Backstage, producers were already buzzing. Word of Carrie's clapback had spread across the production floor. Clips of her response were being flagged as viral material, and social media coordinators were preparing to upload the moment online before the show even finished airing. Meanwhile, in the audience, a middle-aged man leaned over to his wife and whispered, "That was something else. She really stood her ground." His wife nodded, her expression one of admiration. "That's what we need more of," she said. "People who don't back down when it matters." Carrie's team, waiting in the green room, exchanged glances of approval. They knew this wasn't just another interview, it was a defining moment. One of her assistants turned to another and said, "This is going to explode online, just wait." And they were right. As the segment concluded and the credits rolled, viewers at home were already grabbing their phones. By the time Carrie stepped off the stage, Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram were flooded with clips of her words. Hashtags like #Carrie Underwood Clapback and #Authenticity. Matters trended within minutes. The responses were overwhelmingly positive. Fans praised Carrie's composure and grace, while others, who hadn't previously been fans, expressed newfound respect for her. Even some of Melanie's regular viewers chimed in, calling out the host for her aggressive tactics. "Carrie just schooled her," one comment read, accompanied by a gif of applause. But it wasn't just social media taking notice. By the next morning, major news outlets had picked up the story. Headlines ranged from "Carrie Underwood stands her ground in heated interview" to "Country star delivers viral clapback." The moment had become more than just a viral clip. It was a cultural conversation about respect, authenticity, and standing firm in your beliefs. But as the world dissected the interview, Carrie reflected on the moment with her usual quiet resolve, knowing this was about more than just a viral sensation. Carrie Underwood woke up the next morning to find her phone buzzing with notifications. Friends, family, fans, even people she hadn't spoken to in years were sending her messages of support. Headlines and viral clips flooded her social media feeds, each one praising her poise and dignity. But Carrie wasn't looking for validation. For her, the real impact lay in the messages from everyday people who saw a piece of themselves in her. One message in particular stood out. It was from a young woman named Anna in Montana. "I watched your interview last night," the message read. "I've always struggled to speak up for myself, but seeing you stand your ground inspired me. Thank you for reminding me that it's okay to have a voice." Carrie smiled, deeply moved. For her, moments like this were what made the spotlight worthwhile. It wasn't about the fame or the headlines. It was about connecting with people and making a difference, however small. Meanwhile, the broader conversation was taking on a life of its own. On morning talk shows, pundits debated the ethics of Melanie's approach, with many calling her out for crossing the line. "There's a difference between tough journalism and outright ambush," one commentator said on a national morning show. What Carrie did wasn't just a clapback, it was a masterclass in grace under fire. But it wasn't just the media weighing in. Ordinary people were sharing their own stories of feeling judged or underestimated, drawing parallels to Carrie's experience. Social media became a hub for these discussions, with hashtags like #GraceUnderFire and #RespectEachOther trending for days. Even Melanie Hayes wasn't immune to the backlash. Clips of her visibly stunned expression were shared widely, often accompanied by captions like, "When your plan backfires." Her regular viewers began questioning her tactics, and some even called for her to issue a public apology. Carrie, however, stayed above the fray. When a reporter caught up with her outside a Nashville recording studio and asked for her thoughts on the viral moment, she simply smiled and said, "I'm just grateful people are talking about the importance of kindness and respect. That's what really matters." Her humility only added to the public's admiration. Articles emerged praising her as a role model, and fans rallied to defend her against critics. It became clear that this moment wasn't just about one interview. It was about the values people wanted to see reflected in public figures. But while the world debated and discussed, Carrie focused on her next step, determined to use the momentum for something meaningful. A week after the interview, Carrie Underwood found herself back in her Nashville home, sipping tea on her back porch as the sun dipped below the horizon. The chaos of the past few days had finally started to settle, but the impact of that moment on Live Tonight with Melanie Hayes still lingered. Carrie had watched as the conversation expanded far beyond herself. From classroom discussions to workplace dialogues, people were talking about respect, authenticity, and the courage it takes to stand firm in a world that often pressures us to conform. She couldn't have planned it, but she welcomed the change. Her manager had suggested capitalizing on the buzz by doing a follow-up interview with a friendlier host, or even a short documentary about the power of speaking out. But Carrie wasn't interested in exploiting the moment. Instead, she wanted to do something that aligned with her values. A few days later, Carrie announced she would be donating a portion of her upcoming tour's proceeds to organizations focused on fostering respectful dialogue and empowering young people to express their beliefs without fear. Her announcement was met with overwhelming support, further cementing her image as someone who didn't just talk about integrity, but lived it. As she reflected on the whirlwind of events, Carrie felt a deep sense of peace. Sometimes, she thought aloud, we're put in uncomfortable situations to remind us of who we are and what we stand for. Her words echoed in her mind as she posted a final message on her Instagram account. It was a simple note to her fans, paired with a candid photo from her latest performance. Thank you all for your kindness and support. Remember, standing up for yourself doesn't mean tearing someone else down. It means showing the world who you are and letting that speak for itself. Stay true to you. The message quickly went viral, with thousands of fans sharing it alongside their own stories of finding the courage to stand up for themselves. Carrie's moment had transformed into a movement, one grounded in the belief that everyone deserves to be heard and respected. And as Carrie stepped onto the stage for her next concert, the roar of the crowd reminded her that sometimes the strongest voice is the one that speaks with grace and conviction. The lesson was clear. Standing firm in your beliefs isn't just about winning an argument, it's about inspiring others to find their voice too. If this story moved you, don't forget to subscribe for more inspiring stories that celebrate courage, authenticity, and the human spirit. Let us know in the comments, when was a time you stood your ground, and what did you learn from it?